My mom actually came from a very poor family, and because of that, she would do really crazy things when they started dating, and she would hoard, like, food, and she would go grocery shopping, like, basically have the entire fridge full of food because she was scared of, not having it. So, I actually grew up with a very interesting mindset where my mother was always like, never talk about money. It's so taboo. Like, you don't want anyone to know, how much you have or how much you don't have. And then my dad was always like, it's okay. People want to do business with successful people. So you should be showing off your success and you should be.
Welcome to the Shift with Tamoa Danielle, where we talk about money, mindset, healing, and leveling up as women entrepreneurs and leaders, not just in business, but in life. Today's conversation is going to bridge strategy and emotion. We're going to talk about wealth. We're going to talk about confidence, investing, and the emotional relationship we have with money, especially as high achieving professionals. I am joined today by Silvia Manent, founder and managing partner of Manent Capital, a Boston-based wealth management firm managing over 60 million in assets. Sylvia has over a decade of experience in investment and wealth management with a background at Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse in Zurich, and JP Morgan. She is both a chartered financial analyst and a certified financial planner, two of the most rigorous distinctions in the financial industry. We're going to talk about her personal journey with money, what led her to initially focus on helping women, and what she's seen when it comes to financial trauma, confidence, and the differences between how women and men experience money. So, Sylvia, welcome to the show.
Uh, Thank you so much, Tamo. I'm so happy to be here and I'm so happy that your team reached out.
We are honored to have you. And honestly, especially just with your wealth of information, you are technically like the first financial planner, financial guru that I've had. And I'm so excited to hear your perspective on financial trauma and all the things when it comes to our money mindset. So before we get started in your career and what you've seen with your clients, I wanted you to kind of just take us back to the beginning a little bit and kind of discuss what was money like in your home growing up?
So that's such a great question. And when I was growing up, my mother always told us that we were just like a, middle class family. I would see girls in their convertibles and we had like a Pontiac minivan. And I was like, Mom, why can't we be like the other kids that had a convertible? And she was like, we are just a hardworking family and we don't believe in buying random things that don't really cause anything. So growing up, it was actually very interesting. My father, I would argue, has a very good money mindset in the sense that he started his own business. He was very aggressive. He was definitely very growth oriented. Really invested in himself and the people that he managed. My mom actually came from a very poor family. And because of that, she would do really crazy things when they started dating, and she would hoard, like, food, and she would go grocery shopping, like, basically have the entire fridge full of food because she was scared of, not having it. So I actually grew up with a very interesting mindset where my mother was always like, never talk about money. It's so taboo. Like, you don't want anyone to know, how much you have or how much you don't have. And then my dad was always like, it's okay. People want to do business with successful people. So you should be showing off your success and you should be. So it's very interesting because I never actually knew what was right, whether it was to be like, hush and not talk about money because it was taboo,
Yeah.
and or was it like being like my father who was like, "No, you definitely are okay with showing off, and if you wanna buy a Porsche, you buy it, and you can totally flaunt your success." And I think fast forward to today, I see I'm definitely with the side of the way my father raised me, which is
Yes.
very different from even my own, personal relationships as well. But that's a little bit of how I was raised in the sense of money was always, like, more of, like, a taboo thing, especially because my mom was the mostly around.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because this is what I talk about, like with couples, and I think people don't understand, like the way that we grew up and perceive money, like that mindset is going to go into our relationship. And I
Mhm.
always, just as a child myself, when I think about my parents too, it's so interesting how that, where you come from, then that forms. But then you have two people that have two different thought processes. This is, oh, how do you kind of mush it together? So, since you do have like one end of the spectrum with thought from one parent and the other, what first sparked your interest in finance and investing?
So, really interesting. I remember being 9 years old in middle school, and this girl, her name was Anne, and she was like, Sylvia, you're always talking about money. Like, what is wrong with you? You're always talking about money. And for me, it was just a fascinating aspect. I thought that money was, you always get told money is the root of all evil. And I remember
Mhm.
reading the book randomly. I had no friends in middle school and I remember just so I would read a lot. And one of my first books that really impacted me was actually Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That book completely changed my mindset. And I realized that the way my father had brought me was the right way to bring me up. And it was when I realized that you wanted to be a business owner, right? You wanted to invest, you wanted to build wealth. Where if he basically had in his book, he has a little quadrant
Mhm.
and he basically shows if you're an employee, if you're an investor, if you're a business owner or a freelancer. And he said it's not good to be an employee or a freelancer. You need to be an investor and a business owner. So that right there, I was like, I'm going to go into business. I'm going to be investing. This is what I'm going to do because this totally resonates with me. And it's what the rich dad in the book would say.
Mhm.
And it made me feel good about being okay with talking about money and
Yeah.
so that actually initially sparked my interest, right? Because I was like, this is really fun. If you are investing, you have the ability to build wealth really from nothing. And on top of that, when you have your own financial freedom, you're able to say no to things you don't like, right? You can't say no to a
Wow.
job you don't
Gives
want.
you options.
Exactly, right,
Yes.
and that's what I loved, right? I never wanted to depend on anybody, whether it was a boss, whether it was a partner, whether it was a specific friend. It was a very independent mindset that I wanted to, and I think that book also kind of sparked it from what I had been growing up, and so a little bit, I kind of loved the thing of money, but if you fast forward to a couple years later, I grew up in the biotech industry. My father was in the biotech space, so I thought
Okay.
I originally was going to go into life science, and I met someone when I was in San Francisco doing an internship, and he really long story short, he got me an internship at JP Morgan in Boston, and I was actually finally able to invest, right? I had always wanted to invest, but I never knew how. I was like, "How
Yeah.
do you buy stocks? Like, do you need" and back then when I was, I'm 36 now, back then, if you wanted to buy a stock, you needed a financial advisor. You needed to, like, understand these
Mhm.
charts and all these things, and there wasn't the education, right, that we have today where
Right.
just go to ChatGPT and ask them.
And go to an app and
Exactly.
right.
And it honestly, I fell in love with investing. It was like the first
Wow.
time when I realized I could work less and make more. And on top of that, it was just something that there was no women around in that field. And it was
Right.
fun to be around a bunch of guys who were super nice, explaining to me
Mm.
things really well. And I was like, this is totally what I want to get into. There's such a niche, there's such an opportunity for more women to understand investing, but there's no women doing this because it's scary and long story short, that's my how
Wow. Wow, you definitely carved your own path. I have to go back for a second though, because honestly, you blew my mind when you talked about Anne saying that at 10 that you talked about money. So I know, I'm thinking, okay, your dad talks to you, but just that part, like, do you know kind of where that have you thought about like where that came from? Or even like, did your dad give you the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad? Or
No, it's very interesting. We would on the weekends, we would just go to Barnes& and Nobles. So,
uh-huh.
basically, my weekend activities was Saturday, I would wake up, we would go to the movies, then we would go to Chili's and eat, and then And then we would go to Barnes& and Nobles to buy books, and now looking back to it's I've, like, literally spend my days, like, hiking and skiing and being in nature. I would not recommend.
Wow.
But it's so I would read a lot because I
Yeah.
never a good sport, and so that was, like, my typical weekend, and so I remember just seeing the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was like, "I wanna be rich, like, let me read
Oh,
that book,"
wow.
but it was just something that everybody's taught that, right? Everybody's taught money is a taboo, don't talk about
Yep.
money, tell anybody how much money you make, how much money you
Yes.
have. I understand, not wanting to tell people how much money you make or you have, mostly not from a taboo, but from a, litigation society, right?
Right,
If
right.
people know you're wealthy, they're gonna go after you. So, totally am for that, but I think it's extremely important to talk about money. So, a great example was I was just at a restaurant in my local town,
Uh-huh.
and I thought that I was getting a great deal on my propane for my heating bill. And I was like, I am paying $3.50 for propane. No, sorry, $2.50 for propane. And I tell the owner of the restaurant, she goes, I'm paying $1.80. And I'm like, and I remember being like, wait, what? And it's like, wow, I thought I was getting a good deal. It's good to talk to people. We talk about money,
Yes.
talk about our spending, and then we realize that getting screwed over. So,
Uh-huh.
long story short, I was able to negotiate like a 175. But it's so important to talk about money because if you don't talk about money, companies are going to take advantage of you. You know,
Mm.
uh, CP like, and I'm not talking about just a financial advisor, but they're going to talk everybody will take advantage of you if you do not know what everybody else is.
Yes. And
So
that's in personal and business, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
if you're on top of your stuff, people will take you seriously, and they
Mhm.
won't and unfortunately, we as women are still minorities,
Yes.
and we still pay more for cars. We still pay more for a lot of things that men don't. So we just
Mhm.
need to be aware that most men are getting a better deal than us,
Mhm.
and we just need to be aware of that and negotiate hard, which is something that most women don't do enough of, which is negotiate.
Sylvia, that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm kinda with the woo-woo, right? I say the woo-woo, but it's like spiritual alignment, right? Because I'm thinking as a child, sometimes I think when I listen to people's stories, like our past are almost like chosen for us before we choose it. I just find it so fascinating that at such a young age, you are already in alignment to go into the business and the career you went in. Like that, just hearing that story from you is just, to me, is mind blowing. It really, really is. And just how you have this passion, and then when we talk about money, and that's why I became a financial therapist, because I realized, like, talking to my clients, the first thing they would talk about is like the trauma and the experiences they had, but they don't want to talk about, but there's nobody to talk about the shame that's connected to it. And like you were saying, like money is the root of all evil. And that's not true. The love of money that is the root of all evil because of what
Yeah,
the person does with it, right? And so we're
exactly.
taught all of these things that's not true about money, but we have to live every day. We go to work every day, but we don't wanna talk about the thing that we do the most to make the thing. It's
Exactly,
so
and we
insane when
all
you
want
think
it.
about it.
Like, let's
We
just
all
be
want it.
there is nothing
Yes.
better than feeling safe in your plan, in your
Yes.
there's no and sometimes, it's just that peace of mind that money buys where you get to choose what job you want, you get to choose where you want like, I cannot believe that someone would say that money doesn't bring happiness. Money is very important, and money has
Yes.
the ability to really impact your life and other people's lives. So
Yes.
I would even disagree with a I can't even imagine someone trying you make it seem like it's bad, but
Mhm.
it's like money is just a tool, right? It's just the same thing as having a lot of
It
chickens
is.
or
Yep.
having, a different types of product or having a lot of land. Nobody goes, "Wow, you've got 10 acres, you're so greedy." They're like, "That's awesome." But when we talk about money, all of a sudden we put the word dollar in front of it, and it's like a bad thing. So,
Mhm.
I realized just how and honestly, growing up, I would see it a lot. So, it's funny you say that. So, my parents were just middle people, very normal, but I remember my mom, when I was 6 years old, she built a new house. and she built a new house in, like, in the mountains in Spain, and it
Wow.
was a beautiful home, and I remember she would tell me, she goes, "Yeah, this woman wouldn't talk to me," and all of a sudden she came to my house and she saw the house and everybody started being, like, extra nice to her, and that
Mm.
happened. My mom would tell me those stories, like, over and over, and so you would see, like, people just respected you more if you had success, and life is just easier with money, so why wouldn't you
Mm.
want it?
It gives you access.
Exactly,
It gives you
exactly.
access. And you said something, right? The, safe,
Yeah,
right? Because I think that people, we go through things so much when it comes to money and our financial situations that we don't realize, and I talk about this all the time, how our emotions and our safety is tied into our nervous system when it
yeah.
comes to money. And so was is there been a time where you had, like, a shift to understand kind of like how money is emotional and that it can create safety for us?
I think it was when it was pretty much when I left my job, right?
Okay.
I had worked at Morgan Stanley and I loved it, and I had worked at Credit Suisse, but I didn't actually leave my job until I had a big enough cushion. I had had to 2 years of my expenses. And I remember it was a little bit tough, right? Because mostly from an identity crisis, because now I wasn't Sylvia Manent working for a large bank that was very prestigious. I was just
Mhm.
Sylvia Manent. Hi, I'm starting a business and I don't know if this is going to work out.
Yeah.
But I had that safety net in my cash cushion and I was very frugal. Like I lived in a studio apartment in Boston. I was very, but it made me feel really safe. And remember that feeling where I was able to take that risk because of that cushion that I had. And because I
Mm.
built it and I was aggressive and I was frugal for the first, you know, 10, 15 years of my life, I was not, going like I still drive the same car I did when I was 16.
Yeah.
For me, the importance of freedom and the importance of choosing what I wanted to do with my time was just so much more important than anything that a nice apartment or, a fancy car or anything like that. And so that's when I realized really the power of money and how it can really impact your being able to sleep well at night.
Yeah, and you know what that reminds me of? It's the thing of which honestly, not I know I wasn't taught it and many people around me, is that self-gratification, like the discipline.
Well,
Because if we can, have the discipline now, right? It's not to like cut yourself off where you're just eating noodles every day, but
right.
it's really to create this discipline for yourself to know that the payoff later will be greater. So driving that car when you were 16 until you were however old,
Till
if that
today.
was right till today, hello,
I
is
know.
gonna take you to whatever your goal is, 10 years later to have assets, have your business, have millions, whatever it is,
Yeah.
then it's worth it. Because I think what happens, because as long as you're satisfied and you feel like you're living your authentic life, I think what happens to us is people, naturally as humans get so caught up in what other people think
Yep.
or compare ourselves, because you could have compared yourself to the boys at,
Yeah.
at Stanley or wherever, JP Morgan, wherever you were, you could have compared yourself to them, but you knew what your goals were and what they are. And so it sounds like to me that you were just very disciplined in achieving what it was that you wanted for yourself.
Yes. I mean, I love that. I mean, that's a great way to put it. And I think it's helpful because to be honest, now looking back, I just love being able to go skiing on a random Tuesday simply because
Yes.
I made decisions that were a little bit tough, right? I was
Yeah.
going to these expensive Pilates classes or buying, like, I was always very careful. And still today, I would say I'm a very frugal. My husband is always like,
Yeah.
"You're so cheap. You need a new car." I'm like,
She's like,
okay.
"But I'm going skiing on a random on a random Tuesday or whatever." She's like, "I'm fine."
Like, I think it's totally okay to be frugal as long as
Yeah,
you're not negatively impacting someone's life. So I don't think
correct.
I
Yeah.
think what's bad is when you're using people. So I know there's some people out there that they'll save their money, but they'll spend someone else's. They'll be like, let me, go to some people's homes and not be generous. That is
Yes.
not at all. I don't have
Yeah.
like I've had people around me like that and they're cut off from my friendship. They're not my friends. They are not
Yes.
be invited to my wedding because it's like you are just using me and other people for your financial benefit.
Mhm.
So it's totally okay to be frugal and careful as long as you're not negatively impacting somebody else's goals,
I
which
totally
you'll
understand.
see, unfortunately, if you're someone who's successful and generous, people will take advantage of you. I've seen it with a lot of people close to me.
Or
And
if
that
you
and
are
if you take advantage
successful,
of someone I love, you will be cut
yes.
from our lives.
Period. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. Or you see people like you said, like with your mom, right? Like we talked about the access is like, oh, they see something and they want to attach themselves to you just because of what they believe that you could maybe perceive do for them, right?
Yes, exactly. Because of a status symbol, like,
Yes,
all of a sudden,
exactly.
right? Back in the day, we didn't have social media. We couldn't show off our bank.
Yes.
Like, now people
Yes.
take screenshots of their bank accounts, but back then and still today, it's actually a little bit I mean, you could say some people say it's
Yeah.
tacky.
Yeah.
Now if you have a nice home, everybody can know if you have a nice home, and you're not really showing off, you just have a nice
Yeah.
home. It was a
Yeah.
more of like a status symbol.
Yes.
I just saw how different people treated you when you had success
Mhm.
and how easier in a way life was.
Yes.
And I was like, "Why wouldn't I want that?" I obviously, those people are not real friends, so they're not, but you have
Right.
to just be aware.
Yeah,
But it is, people want to be around successful people, and people want to do business with successful people.
they do.
And something my father told me growing up, and it is so true, why would you hire for example, why would you hire a financial therapist or a financial advisor who's not successful, who's not where you want to be? Why? Like, how can you even I can't even acknowledge sometimes I have colleagues and they're financial advisors. They're great people, but I'm like, how can people even hire you? You don't even have your stuff together.
Together, right. No, 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 it's true. It's so true.
So
And I think we talked about this before we came on, but it's same thing like as mentorship in communities and things. And you were talking about just it's the same thing like let's just say real estate, for instance, these people like, I can help you buy 100 homes and do the Burr method and this and that. And then you find out the real story, they don't even own one piece of property.
oh my god, you know what the biggest lie is? When people say, yeah, they're like, "I own 500 doors," and they don't actually own 500
Own
doors.
500
They
or
own, like,
uh-huh.
one share of a syndication that owns 500 doors. I'm like, "That's
Correct.
such a lie."
It is.
And I've been seeing that a lot even with big influencers where they've been
Yeah.
caught.
Yeah, because it's actually not really doing the work. I think the people that do the work, because the whole point of having a mentor is for you to cut off time to do what they did. So they're able to give you the blueprint without all of the mistakes. But if
Yeah,
they never actually did it, then they're just taking a sheet from somebody else's book and saying, oh, this is what you do, because they haven't actually lived the experience. And that's why, like, I want a mentor that lived the experience. So they are
yeah,
really because that's where the passion comes from, you know what I mean? That's why with you, I can tell you live the experience because you are so passionate about what you do, you know what I mean? You've
oh,
done the work, and so
love
that is the difference when you're dealing with people, and that's what I've come to learn because there is a difference in that, and it's not about, like, having everything all together, but when you hear someone speak and you understand what they're talking about based off their lived experience, it creates something different in your mind. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, okay, you stepped out on your own, right? And you were saying, I heard you say a little bit about like you felt good because you knew, like you had made a plan, right? So it doesn't sound like you had a whole bunch of fear necessarily attached to it when you stepped out. Is that kind of correct? Or what
So
would you
that is
say?
exactly the money fear from "Oh my god, can I live on my own?" That's
Yeah.
not the case. I always recommend to my clients, if they're gonna start their own business, that they have 2 years of cash for their because it takes longer than you're gonna think.
Yes.
Now, granted, if you like, it takes a little things always take longer, things come up. It happens to every single business. It happens to pharma companies, it happens to,
Mhm.
financial companies, tech companies, every single company it happens to. So people always have these nice little projections, but it takes a little bit longer. And so you just need to account for that. So the money was not afraid. What I was afraid of And what I made me uncomfortable was actually losing my identity as a civilized person of society, where I had a
Mm.
job. And I remember just because you all of a sudden, when you quit your job and you don't have something, I felt very, like, naked. I felt like when someone would have like, ask me, "What do you do?" I'd be like, like, I'd be like, "Well, I'm starting my own business." And then it wasn't until probably I had 6 months in my business and I had a couple clients that I felt, "Oh, I'm actually, like, a legit business owner, and I don't feel." And then it was nice because I started joining some masterminds. So, like you, I joined in one mastermind that was my first mastermind was like a total scam, but I did
Mhm.
meet some nice people out of it. So
Yes.
even though the lady was like a fake coach regurgitating,
Yes,
you
there
know,
are a lot of them.
a
Yes.
lot of fake coaches,
Yes.
I got to be around other people that were in the same space, and then I just didn't
Mhm.
feel awkward and weird.
Yeah.
And I think I would advise if anybody's starting their own business to just find someone who's actually doing find a mastermind that is actually doing. So I joined Boss Babe right from the start. Boss Babe was like 20 bucks a month, the society, and it was
Okay.
great because it was cheap. I was able to be around other people that was like were starting their own businesses, and I just didn't feel uncomfortable anymore.
Yeah. That's amazing. So 2 things that you said. One was so interesting, and until you said it, it started making me think about myself. So I talk about identity all the time.
Yeah,
But when you just said feeling, because we talk about, like, that imposter syndrome, right? When you
yeah,
said feeling naked because not having kind of like a break from society, from what I call, like, the programming. So I could resonate with what you said because my identity for so long was wrapped up in working for the federal government. Like,
yeah,
to me, it was such a big deal, and I was so proud to have gotten that
yeah,
job because it was for me in my career, it was kind of like the pinnacle,
right,
right? And it was the most successful that I was, and it made me feel so good about just what I was doing as a whole. And when I left after being there for almost 10 years, did feel it reminded me of the like Naked and Afraid. And so,
mm,
but I never thought about it the way that you put it. Like literally when you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh. And so that is exactly what happens though in our heads when we leave our jobs. You feel naked and you
yeah,
just feel caught out there. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, it is a break in identity for a minute. And then it's like, is this right? And then, like you said, even though you may be an expert at what you do, you've done all of this work, it's almost like you have to prove to yourself, like once you said, like once you get the client, and it's so interesting that we think that because we are already the expert, but it's a weird thing. Like you just said, that was so deep. That really was deep. And then the second part was the thing about the community, because that was the thing that I realized. I feel like with anything that you do that's like a big step, something like this, you need a community of people. So the same thing happened to me too. I had like that first mentorship I went in was just,
mhm,
but I met some really great people. And we actually like 2 of them, we are really close now, and they're really great people. So I always say, "Okay, I can talk about the money that I lost, but the value in these people has been great." So I definitely resonated with everything that you said because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, how important community is because you feel alone a
yeah,
lot of times, you know, because 'cause you're building this, you may have people around you, but it's different when you're, like, in this thing. Um Okay, that was so great. Like you have me so hyped. So,
it's
what
very
do you
common, by the way.
it is.
Very common, and I'd like to just say one last thing. When I was studying
Yeah.
CFA, the CFA is like the leading investment, and it's very just very rules based. It actually I remember one of the problems in the book was like it was this man who had just sold his business for 100 million, and it was like, what's the biggest issue you need to realize as a financial planner with this person? And one of them was like the emotional and the identity. And
Mm.
so not only do we women as do it, but men, they feel it even more because they're
Wow.
supposed to be like, right, the
The
breadwinner.
breadwinner. Yes.
Seen it with my father when he retired. I saw, so that's why you always need to have an identity, um, but it doesn't have to necessarily be the job.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. Oh, that's so good because I wanna talk about that later on too, the difference with men and women and the emotional side of money. But I know that okay, so when you left, what do you think really happened for you to really trust yourself in order to launch Manic Capital? Like,
So
what was that factor?
it was, and I know I shouldn't say this, but getting my certification, like, so getting the CFA had always been like a big, big, big deal for me because it was like the pinnacle, right? It was the pinnacle of having made it. There was
Yes.
barely, when you look at the studies, it's like one of the hardest exams in the world. Very few people make it. And so for me, it was like a status symbol, right? I was gonna lose the status of being at Morgan Stanley and an identity, so I needed
Uh,
something else I needed that status, right? I didn't have a Harvard Business School on my resume, and so I had the CFA and the CFP. Those 2 gave me a lot of confidence, right? And I know people say, "No, certifications are not necessary." They're not, but it was necessary for me to have the identity that I was gonna be
yes.
using now that I was no longer working at a large reputable bank like
Yeah.
JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, Morgan Stanley, all these banks that I had. And so I needed that in order to prove to myself, mostly for myself, but also for and clients. And a lot of clients today, they still come to me and they hire me because of those certifications, because they're like, wow, if this woman can pass this.
Yes.
She can deal, like, if she can put herself through this, she is, like, the person I want managing my money because she will go to the end of the world for me. And
Yeah.
so it helped me. It was something, right, I had always wanted to do it. I was like, when I have those, I'm gonna do it. But I have to say, I could never have done it without my father. My
Uh,
father was an entrepreneur and he was very, from day one, right? From when I was 9, he was always like, yeah, you got to start your own company. I was like, yeah, we're going to do that. So I always knew, and he was like, yeah, you get a few years of experience. Once you have your CFA, bam. And he was like, no, it's time, right? I got my CFA and he's like, it's time now. And I'm like, okay.
like, push you out the window, "Go."
So it was 100% him that
Yeah,
really pushed me, and
that's
I could
amazing.
never have done it without his support. My mom was always like, she's more of the conservative, was like, "Now you don't have Morgan Stanley on your resume, what are you gonna do?" And then my dad goes, "Now she's gonna have Manent Capital on her resume."
Oh,
So he was super supportive. He's an awesome person, such a good human being, such a good leader. And I honestly, I'm very grateful. And he's probably the best mentor because he himself, right? He's not like a
wow.
coach. He started his own business. So,
Right.
I wish it was like I found it in me. I didn't. It was somebody else. It was an external force. And I wanted it, but he really pushed me over the edge.
But that's amazing. And you know what, when you were talking, and I'm thinking about as you were talking about everything, like your decisions and being frugal and
Mhm.
then taking the risk for an entrepreneur, and what your mom said and your dad said, but you have the mix of the 2.
Yeah.
Because you have the risk taker over here, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have the frugal person. So you found a way to blend the 2 together to make it work for your life.
That's actually such
And
a good point you said that. I think
yeah, because when you were talking, I thought about it. I was like, there it is.
this is
That's
why I'm such
it.
a good financial therapist, 'cause I've never actually thought about that, but you have a great point.
Yeah, you did. You took the best of both worlds and you made it work for you. Yeah.
So, I
However, your mind did that thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing. Okay, so fast forward, now you have your business and you start working. I know initially you told me that you started working with women. And so,
Yeah.
kind of, what was your drive for wanting to do that?
So, originally, right, I started my business in 2020, not on purpose. That was just the timing that it happened. It was, like 2019 of December when I pretty much started the business.
Okay.
And COVID happened, and a lot of women were starting their own businesses and being very successful because everyone was at home. They were bored. And so they were just buying
Right.
masterminds and coaching. And I don't
Trying to
know.
figure out like what's happening right now. I need to do something. Yeah.
Exactly. Everyone was
Yeah.
like starting
Yeah.
businesses. And so I was doing a lot of like online webinars. And so naturally women started gravitating towards me because I was a lot on Instagram. And I started working with women and really enjoying it. just enjoying. They're like, and I could tell it was a win-win because they would say, "Wow, I've never had I can't believe you're a financial advisor. You're like the coolest financial advisor I've ever met. And I wish I wish I had met you before," and all these things where it made me feel good because like, it was like, wow, I'm actually helping you. And it's hard to find someone who's like a certified financial planner, a CFA, and can talk in a way that you can understand that is not going to be condescending because most
That's
of
so
them are very
true.
full of themselves, especially CFA charter holders. Many of them are like, "Oh, the CFP is for people who can't get the CFA." A lot of them
Wow.
are very full of themselves.
Got
So
you.
I think there's a lot of like, you know, disconcerting. So long story short, I just really enjoyed it. But it's
Yeah.
funny because as I was working with women and my marketing and my messaging started to get really dialed in, I started attracting men as well. And I think it was probably because men are even in a tougher spot than women are because it's a lot harder for a man to say, don't know. I
Mhm.
don't understand this. And so I think they realized that I was speaking in normal English. And it's not just women that need that, men need that too. And
Yeah.
this is something, another thing my father always told me, people know a lot less than they're willing to admit. And I remember that caught in my eye, in my head, and I started speaking to men the same way that I was speaking with women, right? I
Uh-huh.
was explaining concepts that were hard to understand. And I think a lot of men actually started to feel good about the way I was explaining things because I just didn't assume that just because you're successful at your job doesn't mean you understand the stock market or investing. It's two completely different things and
Yes.
it's very normal to not know and just you just need smart or good advisors around you. And so I originally started with women, but now I would say I get a little bit of 50-50 with men and couples, especially a lot of
Wow.
couples too where they don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm just talking to one specific person.
Mhm.
So
No, but you know what? When you were talking about the men, because earlier when you said, how you're connecting, men's identity, of course, right, to what they do and then being the breadwinner, it seems to me they can probably be more of themselves
yeah,
and in a way, maybe not openly, like, say, "I'm scared,"
right.
but way more than if they talk to another man where they feel like they have to be macho or, you know what I mean, like, prideful, where I know women just naturally were softer, right? And
Yes.
so I think that energy made them feel more comfortable, and on top of the fact that you had your certifications, and so you were doing just what the big boys were doing, right? So you had the mix of both.
That is such a good point, and I've seen this a lot, and I now that I'm looking back on a lot of things, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, first of all, I mean, women like to deal with women, and
Yep.
men really like dealing with women, so it's like
It's funny, it's like, yeah, we're everything.
and it's so funny you say that because you are right in that sense, and it's probably a competition in a man. I think you have to be a
Yeah.
very secure man to
Yes.
be okay with just grabbing the best advisor, whether it's a man or a woman.
Mhm.
And there's very few men that are like that. But it is true. I think you get a lot more out of people also when you're more nice and sweet. I know my husband always told me that. He's like, you get a lot more out of people if you're just nice rather than
Yes.
yelling at someone and being
Yes.
like condescending and rude. And it's so true. Like when you smile and you ask politely and you say please and thank you, everyone likes you better and it's just much easier to do
Yeah,
business.
it opens up there's an old saying is like, "You catch more with sugar than"
Oh, yep, yep, yeah, that's a good, I like that, but
So,
it's true.
how do you think financial trauma shows up differently for women compared to men when they kinda tell their stories?
So that's literally a great question. I would say at least in my experience, and I'm not a financial therapist like you, so I wouldn't.
That's okay, but you see a lot. Like, you're talking about money all the time with
I mean,
them.
I get a lot of women crying a lot.
Yeah,
And I get a
yeah.
lot of clients when, they start opening up because they inherited a 401k from their parent and it's extremely emotional. I can't even imagine having to deal with something like that. And so they want to be very, responsible and they're like, if I inherited this, I want to be, I want to be a steward of this wealth.
Mhm.
And so I see, well, a lot of women are very vulnerable and very they are openly crying. I've never really had man be vulnerable in that sense. Um Tend to just maybe not speak up as loud as I've seen it.
Mm,
Um
okay.
they tend to be a little bit more reserved and more quiet in that sense, but that would be my experience, but
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
what
but that makes no, 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 that makes total sense. I think because as women, most women, right, we naturally just show emotion.
Yeah.
So when we're dealing with experiences, that's usually our first way of expressing ourselves. And then with men,
Yeah.
again, because either way, you know, and it may be shame involved in it or just however that is, right? Not knowing what to do and needing help. Men do tend to not want to ask for help. Like they'll be sitting somewhere knowing they need the help and they came to the place, but then when you ask them questions, they like have nothing to say. And it's so weird. It's like, did you come for me to help you?
Yes.
Or so no, no, no. That's no, no, no. That's a great observation. That I think that's really that's so true. Okay, so now this is the second part of my question. What is the biggest confidence gap that you may see between women and men when it comes to investing?
Oh, that's a great one. So men tend to be, and this is generally what we've seen in studies too, is that men tend to be very overconfident in their investing ability. They tend to overtrade, and women tend to be extra conservative and don't really touch things. So you'll see most women in this, they will just be paralyzed and they'll have a lot of cash in their bank accounts just
Ah,
sitting there because they're afraid to do the wrong thing with their money. Whereas generally with men, with what I see is they will tend to have lots of small little positions at like Robinhood, different brokerage accounts, buy some crypto, buy a little bit of everything, and kind of like buy a little bit of stuff that they don't really understand, but they think that if they do a lot of different small things, it will be better. So now
yeah.
it's more where men are overdoing and women are underdoing.
Do you feel that women do more research and men tend to act more impulsively, possibly in that way?
That's a great yes. I would definitely say, I mean, even the studies, there's a great book that
Yeah,
my husband got me when we first started dating, and it's the little book of behavioral investing. And in that book, and I always remind him of that, it
yeah,
really said women tended to overtrade and women and men are very impulsive. And so they did studies and it showed that when a man asked his wife before placing a trade, they outperformed, or when a man used his woman to like help him with his investment, he did
yes.
better. Whereas with a woman who asked his man for investment advice,
Advice. Uh-huh.
worse. And I see this, I've actually seen this with
Wow.
my parents. So what's really interesting is I think my husband just heard me.
He probably came in here and see like, "Oh, you are listening."
So and I actually saw it with my parents. A really interesting dynamic is that my father was a smart man, but he never knew anything about investing. He started investing when he sold his business, 15 years ago. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she was a nurse, so she has no financial background. But
Okay.
one of her friends, who is another woman, told her, she goes, "During the financial crisis, I told my husband not to sell because that's what you're supposed to not sell. You're supposed to, like, not touch it and just let it up and let it ride because it's gonna go up and down, but then it goes up over time."
Right.
So my mom, when we probably had the 2020 crash and the 2022 crash
Uh-huh.
since I started my business. And my father would be like, "Do we need to sell? Do we need to sell?" My mom goes, "No, no, don't touch it. Don't touch it. I told you guys not to touch these investments." And it's so funny. Like, and now my mom is just so smart
That
at
is so
money,
cute.
and
I
it's,
love
like,
it.
so funny, and now that I, like, now that they're older, like,
Yes.
really good investor, and I see it so much with after I read the book, I realized how much I was seeing it in my own parents, where my mom would be, like, calming my father down and be like, "Don't touch it, you're not supposed to touch anything, you're gonna
Wow.
do better if you don't," and it's just I actually love her for that.
Yeah, and that's amazing though, but that lends, like you said, to women and then her mindset too of listening and understanding it. Like she may not know all the logistics, but
Yeah.
she understands that basic rule of oh, you know what? That does make sense not to do that. You know what I mean? And it's so interesting because the way that men and women, how we hear things, where your dad as a man, he may have taken a whole different take on that. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
I think that's so true. That's a great example. A great example. Let me ask you, so how do you think someone can move from anxiety about investing into feeling more accomplished and excited?
Do $100. So back in the
Yeah.
day, you could not invest $100. It was just too expensive, commissions were really high. What I would say is pick a bank that you want to do business with. These are
Okay.
called brokerage accounts. I love, Schwab and Fidelity. Those are my
Yes.
favorite ones.
That's, Charles Schwab.
I'm a Charles Schwab. I have Charles Schwab. I love them. I love Charles Schwab. They're great. They're very
Yeah.
friendly. And so I would just pick Charles Schwab, open up a simple account, just like a brokerage. It's called just a brokerage account. It's just a simple, easy account where you can put as much
Yes.
money as you want or little. And I would put in $100 and you can buy like an ETF or just even a mutual fund. And so these are just basically they're like stocks, but it's instead of buying one stock, you're buying a basket of 500 different companies. And so it's
Yes.
a really easy way to diversify. And I would say put $100 in there, leave it alone and then watch it. And then, maybe a couple weeks later do another 100. A couple weeks, and slowly and surely get used to seeing the ups and downs and then you'll get used to it and it will be my first time I traded my own money. It
Uh-huh.
was super scary, but I
Yeah.
opened my account. I was at Fidelity at the time, and I bought 3 stocks. I bought Danaher, I bought Cepheid, and I bought these were all biotech companies that I
Uh-huh.
knew. So it was actually better for me to buy companies that I knew because I had worked
Yes.
with them, and it was
Yes.
psychologically easier.
Right.
But honestly, do whatever. You can buy Coke or Pepsi or whatever stock
Mhm.
you like. You can buy Amazon or Google, Apple,
Yeah.
Facebook, and then just leave it, like, have it there for a little bit, watch it, log in, and then it will be easier and easier and easier.
I love that. I love that because I think people think that, okay, you're trading first of all, TV and movies, like, they get you all but people don't understand, like you said, you can literally the stock could be less than $100,
Yeah.
and you can buy if you like Walmart, do Walmart. You know what I mean?
I
You
love
can do
Walmart.
so many
I love
right, you can Apple, like, there's so many little, stocks you can do, Tesla. There's a million different things that you can do, but I think just starting somewhere just to start getting a basic understanding and feeling comfortable about doing you don't have to have thousands of dollars to trade, and it does grow over time because even with the market going up and down, it's something it always comes back around. It does come back around, and then I say just get a book, somebody's book.
Yeah.
Sylvia, do you have a book? Because we would
My
buy it.
favorite, I would say the little book on behavioral investing. I think this
Yes.
book that because at the end
Okay.
of the day, investing is not hard. It's your
Yes.
emotions that are gonna keep you. So you need to just be
Yes.
aware of all the behavioral biases that we have as human beings, and just when you're aware of them, you're like, "Okay, this is what happens usually, this is how people act." And read
Yes.
that book, once a year. Like, remind yourself of all of the behavioral biases, and then if you want, you don't even need to write a book. I would even say every month, put a little bit of money into a well diversified mutual fund or like an S&P 500, which is an
Yes.
index fund, cheap, low cost. You're going to own the 500 largest companies or you're going to own a bunch of different companies so you don't have to worry about which one and picking stocks. And then you're going to just do that over and over and over again. And just like successful people, they do the boring things over and over and over again, which then adds up over time. It's the same with investing. You do the boring thing over and over. And sometimes some clients are like, this is too simple. It's
Mm,
too easy. It can't be this easy. I'm like, yes, it's simple, but it's not easy because you are your own worst enemy and you are going
mm.
to try to sell when you're not supposed to sell. If you're a man and you're listening to this, have your woman help you. And
Hello,
if
right?
but if you're and then go on there, it's so much easier nowadays with YouTube videos. Just type in how
Yes.
to invest $100 and I'm sure you'll find many different tutorials on how to do it with Schwab or Fidelity.
Yeah, and I love that because back to like the self-gratification thing, I think that, and how you talked about social media content, right? Because most of the time, now there's people that are authentic and they're telling kind of the truth of things. You just see people in the place they are, but you don't see where they came from.
That's
So, and the ones that are valid that do have, if you want to look at all the material things or whatever, they didn't just pop up and get there. They did all of those small things consistently over time to get to where they were. But even on that journey, there were opportunities that came up that allowed them to grow faster, but they still started with that $100 or maybe less. They
Yep.
had to have a starting place. And I love that you said that because I think we just get so in the mindset of like, I want to get here. But we need to understand that this is something that happens over time, especially as entrepreneurs, because we have so many big ideas and visions and things, which is so great. And I think that sometimes that's where the overwhelming comes from because we know, how great it is and how much impact we want to have, but we forget that there is always a journey and a
One
process that we have to go through. So I appreciate you saying that to just make it more like take a deep breath and just do this thing like one at a time and then over time it will build. So that's great. I know you're so great talking to people that probably come in like all like this and you're just like just relax. It's going to be okay. This is where we're going to start, you know what I mean? So I want to ask you, what do you think is one money belief you had to like challenge in your own journey as you were kind of moving through this?
that you I would say I had so many, uh, different challenges, but that's a great question. So one money belief that I kind of challenged,
Yes.
throughout my journey, I would even say that the whole money is the root of all evil. That was a big one
Yeah.
that I really had to, kind of challenge because in the back of my mind, I knew they were wrong, but I feel like a lot of people kept, saying that. So
Mhm.
that was like something that has been, but also, actually, I'm going to change my mind now that I think of it,
Okay.
that it making money is hard.
Mm,
Making money is hard, that you need to be cold calling and suffering to make money. That's a good one. Like, I always just assumed that to make money, I would need to suffer. I never could realize that I could be, working with amazing clients, doing podcasts with amazing people like you, really
thank
enjoying my
you.
life. I could never, that's for me, it's just so fulfilling. You're going to work, you're talking to people. Everyone is I'm so grateful and lucky that people are really friendly and smart and ambitious, and it makes me a better person. It makes me a better financial advisor. It makes me a better I never could have ever admitted, like, or realized that making money was easy and was fun.
Mm. Sylvia, you just said, no, I talk about this all the time and more as I realized it. Like, if we thought that you have to work hard for money, then we would all be billionaires
Yeah.
because everyone works every day, nine to fives. And over time, you work 50 years and you're working a nine to five and you've worked hard. You've worked for other people. You may have made them millions of dollars and you don't have what that even equated to show for it.
Yep.
So that is 100% right. I think we just get so caught up in that and we don't understand like there is so much more to life than that. And the fact that you said that you can have fun every day doing what you love, helping people because more impact means more income. But I think both of the things that you said are so true, like how you were like money is root of all evil and all of that, because that in its context is a shift. Because like you said, like there's nothing wrong with saying money brings happiness because
Yeah.
the more money you have, the more you can help people.
Yeah.
The more you can grow your business, to more clients you can have, and you can help people to not cry and be
Yeah.
hysterical and, and help change their lives. So I really, 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 really love that. So I'm just going to ask you this. I think I know what answer you're going to say, but how has your relationship with money shifted over the last 6 years since you started your business?
Ooh, that's a great one. I would actually say so my relationship with money since I started my business. I would say I haven't changed my frugal habits.
Okay.
And I've never stopped negotiating. So everywhere I go, this is something I learned from my own father. Always negotiate with everywhere you go. My mom would be very embarrassed when they were dating because it was like the poor people, like poor people negotiate. They ask for a discount. And my dad was like, no, 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 always ask for a discount. And my mom would be always so embarrassed. So that is something that I keep doing.
No. I've heard billionaires say that.
Yeah.
Like, you watch those different things and they're like, "Always negotiate. I don't care what it is." Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, and it's so funny because I had a friend that had a business, and he would tell me that he's like his wealthiest billionaire clients always wanted the best deal. They'd be like,
Yeah.
"Do a better? Can you give me a better deal?" So, always negotiate, always, that has never changed. I would say I would say this has changed in my personal relationship. I think my husband has helped me enjoy my money more. So,
Mm.
in a way where you don't have to just keep saving and investing. And, there is a time when you finally find that you're in a really good space and you're in a good on track for all of my goals. And so, yeah, you can buy a nice car if you want to, or you can treat yourself to a new home improvement project or
Yes.
something where, and I think that hasn't really been like a business thing. It's been more about personal relationship thing, which I
No,
have to
I
thank my
love
husband
that.
for.
No, 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 but that makes sense, and even just, like, switching for a minute, thinking about the perspective, I always say, like, especially in relationships, the goal is to attract a person that helps you grow,
Yeah,
right? Whether that's financially, mentally, whatever the case is. And so it's like you all were in an alignment because like what I'm hearing you say is that you realize that while you built all of this and you did it out of your discipline and then out of your risk, having those both eye to eye, then it was like you met someone that was like, "You built all of this, so now it's time for you to enjoy it, and
yeah.
it's okay." Like, you still have it because the foundation isn't gonna go anywhere. So, no, I love that. So, no, that is a shift in terms of your relationship with money because it's like, well, now you can enjoy your money.
Yes, exactly.
The money that you love, that you built, the business, now enjoy it some. So, no, I love that. I really, really do. Thank you
Yeah,
for
it's like I
sharing that
can't
because
take
that's
it
a
to the grave.
personal. Yeah. Hello, right? You have all the things stacked up on top of it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. The boat and the car. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. So, no, I love that. Okay. And then my last question for you, just for, I would just say, maybe the average everyday person that thinks, all the time, like a financial advisor or someone with all of your certifications, like they always think that that's just for quote unquote the wealthy people to have. Like, can you explain that to people why it's important to hire someone, that is in your position and what it will do for them?
So, number 1, when you're young, time is on your side. And if you have a financial advisor who's going to help you implement your foundation right from the start when you're young, I wish I would have had someone like that, right? I wish that I had done the right thing when I was 21 and investing instead of doing this, buying random stocks here and there. I would be a lot more further ahead today and the money would have been worthwhile. So that's number 1. Time is on your side. So when you have time, you want to maximize that utilization. And so you want someone to help you at least build that foundation. So something I do with my clients is sometimes someone doesn't need an ongoing financial advisor. They just need a one-time strategy plan and setting up their accounts, their investments, and kind of automating all of that and then setting it and forgetting it versus other people that are a little bit more complex may want to have someone. So that's number 1. And number 2 is how are you going to become rich if you're not investing? So
Mm,
if you don't have a business, which is totally okay, you should be investing, right? So like you can't just be an employee and not be investing. You have to own some sort of business or investment portfolio so that your money is working for you when you get too old to work yourself. Because unfortunately, we can't not work until we are 90 years old. Unfortunately,
no,
we
and I
can.
don't want to.
Right. And I don't think many people want. And
No.
so and on top of that, healthcare expenses are very expensive, so you have to be planning for that, especially if you're looking to become financially independent in the US.
No, that's so great. That's so great. I never thought about it from that perspective, but you're right. You're there proactively saying, okay, this is what you need to do to have a lot. So it's in the reverse. So I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I really just, you like, just your mindset and the way that you think, like, you take the, I don't know if people think that financial planners are stuffy or, like you said, like everything's over your head. You just make it so easy to understand. And so for me, I would feel totally comfortable coming to you 100% or referring someone to you because you make it seem so simple. So tell everybody where to find you.
Yeah, so my biggest thing is my Instagram. So it's Wealth Financial Advisor on Instagram. I'm very active there. So you can DM me. If not, if you just type in my name, Silvia Manent, Manent Capital, that's my company. You can go ahead and book a discovery call there. And if you're looking for help, I'm super happy to talk and get you onto the right track and make sure you're doing the best thing with your money.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I love your energy, just the way you just it's such a vibe. It really is. You are a very like incredible person and I just again, I'm so grateful to have you on the shift today. And I want everyone to remember that you are your greatest value, you are your greatest asset. Take care.